I want to just take a quick minute to introduce some of my colleagues here at Shepherd Community. Tim Sturgess is our Chief Administrative Officer. He's been here about 5 weeks, so he knows everything, and we appreciate him coming to help run the business side of things. Andrew Green is our Assistant Executive Director and helps us with a lot of our external relationships and with Minnie Hartman. Becca Kidd is our Chief Program Officer. Colton is our Director of Development. Tim Street is our Assistant Director and Resident Professor, finishing up his PhD, and has been a good partner with us for so many years. Alan Sutherland is our Chief Pipeline Officer. Phil Edwards is our Chief Engagement, and you'll hear from him a little bit into this about volunteers. And so we appreciate your time. We're trying something different. We want to talk about the 6 external focuses. Why does it continue to be a challenge for us? Then we'll be sharing a little bit of what Shepherd is doing and what we're looking to the future to do. And then we'll take some time for Q&A at the end of this, and Phil will share, and I'll close us. John, you've been a great partner. Gleaners is an icon in this community, and I tell folks often, we can't do this alone. It's bigger than all of us. And so Mario Marino in the book Leap of Reason says the great organizations are those that tackle issues bigger than themselves and partner with others to accomplish it. And we're partnering with a great friend in Gleaners, and John, thank you for your leadership. John, what are the continued challenges around hunger in our community?
I think some of it is a mix. There's a programmatic part to that. There's a resource part to that answer. Frankly, there's a communications or even attitudinal issue there. And what I mean by that last part, a bit over 5 years ago, we decided that we weren't going to make progress in tackling chronic health conditions and hunger simultaneously if we didn't first get the community to change the conversation and to think about those two things in an interconnected way and how much difference it makes in terms of the food people eat, or in the case of a chronic health condition like diabetes, the food they don't eat, right? So, but also, I think about my counterpart in Columbus, Ohio, at the Mid-Ohio Food Bank, who has this big poster, and it has a prescription bottle and the words "take with food" circled on the prescription bottle. So there's so much connectivity in terms of issues. So having the right community conversation with all of the stakeholders engaged in the conversation, thinking about the same way, is critical to success for any issue, particularly one that's so interconnected. You can't think about solving hunger for someone one day of the week while they tackle unemployment a different day of the week and housing a third day of the week. And I look to Shepherd frequently, as recently as a conversation with Greg Finnig yesterday, using you guys as an example of an organization that knew this before a lot of the rest of us. The way you go to the door and you don't just provide a box of food but you take along an EMT, you talk about health issues. So you got it. You've unfortunately had to wait for the rest of us to catch up in terms of that interconnected challenges of poverty and hunger and so on. So, but it's, you're right, it's bigger than all of us. And, I think about these daunting numbers, right? I got here 5 years ago, we were doing 20 million meals. First 12 months of the pandemic, we did 103 million meals. Gleaners quintupled in 5 years what we were doing in food distribution, and there's still a huge meal gap. So it's not just it's bigger than all of us. There's this gap that persists even when all of us effectively mobilize our resources, and that's what's behind the Gleaners strategic plan that launched in 2019, where half of our effort, I don't know in resource ratio, but we really decided we had to split our time and our energy and our resources between feeding the line the healthiest, most nutritious mix we could and reducing the line. If we really believe in our hearts that our neighbors are entitled to dignity and respect and not being judged for the situation they're in, but helped, then let's think about helping that family get back to self-sufficiency. And that means coming together, not just in the way Gleaners and Shepherd have come together, but that means coming together with hospitals and partners who have expertise in housing and education and retraining for jobs and so on, and hand our neighbors solutions simultaneously, which is the way they're experiencing it as a family, right? They're dealing with all of that at the same time, not conveniently in isolation that they can solve sequentially. So attitude's part of it, resources is part of it, collaboration is the linchpin to it. And I probably answered more than you wanted in that one answer to a question, but you did push my talk button.
Well, John, you always teach me and I learn. Recently, we were having a conversation and people have said, well, COVID's over, so these numbers are going down. But we've uncovered something. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind with that is there are two distinct timelines. And I think the community at large has a greater awareness of the medical recovery timeline that applies to the pandemic because that's measured by, numbers of cases and fatality rates and all of this medical data, confusing as it is sometimes, that comes out. That tells us a medical timeline for recovery. But we all know that the neighbors we're privileged to serve are really driven by an economic recovery timeline, which could be many years for some households. And it's certainly, in the aggregate, it's longer than that medical recovery timeline. So we need to think in terms of economic recovery, not the shorter term medical. But I think, Jay, if you're referring to the conversation, I think we also, I think Gleaners, as we ramped up, and certainly through hundreds of downstream partners and our food bank partners across the Midwest that we're the wholesale supplier for and all of that, we saw a need increase in response to the pandemic about 67% in Indiana, and yet we increased the meal level in a year 137%. So what does that mean? That means we actually were able to fully respond to the increase and still chip away at some of that decades-long meal gap. In other words, we can do it. But how did we do it? Through a lot of changes in process, through really, really focusing on efficiency, but also welcoming current partners in new and additional or different ways, and welcoming partners who had not previously seen hunger relief as connected to their mission. But when the pandemic hit, they did. Jay referred to my previous career stop at Kroger, and I dealt with literally thousands of charitable organizations in the Midwest in that role. And so when the pandemic hit, Fred Duncan knew I'd moved here, and he called and he said, every cancer patient that we've dealt with in the last, I forget now what number of days he said, but everybody had expressed a food insecurity concern. And he asked, could we help provide food so they could focus on their core mission of helping people struggling through cancer? And then I get a similar call from Tony Mason at the Urban League. And then, we get a call from the Southport Police Department and, on and on. People who did not see themselves any more than we saw them as players in hunger relief suddenly couldn't separate it from effectively delivering on their core mission. And that helped in many ways. It certainly helped in talking to funders and to city leaders and elected officials and even some state agency leaders who really got it anyway, like Dr. Sullivan, who since left FSSA, or Dr. Box. It helped with that messaging, I think, a lot. But it certainly helped with that change the community awareness conversation I was talking about, of people seeing the interconnected nature of things. So is that the conversation you were talking about, Jay? Or?
Yeah, and that there's a whole hidden hungry that we had never touched, and so through this partnership, on Wednesday mornings, my wife and I deliver to about 8 homes, and one of the things we have learned in this last year and a half, I've learned more in my 26 years. I've learned more doing this, and so I appreciate the partnership. what I've learned is they'll say, "Hey, do you know this neighbor over here? He needs food." Well, why don't I give you the food because you know them and you deliver it to them?
Right.
And our whole adage of we want to re-neighbor the hood is happening, and food opens the door for us to bring other services to bear. I think one of my favorite stories is food you've provided for us and we had here. It was on Christmas Day a few years ago, and two police officers knew that we had told them, if you need food, we've got food. And these two officers show up with a gentleman, and they said, can we get some food? And we said, sure, it's Christmas Day. And the officer pulls me aside. He said, we just arrested him for shoplifting at a local little convenience store because he didn't have food for his family for Christmas. And he said, the solution isn't him going to jail, because this guy's never been arrested before. But he didn't want his kids hungry. And through a partnership with Shepherd, IMPD, and Gleaners, we were able to solve that. And I guarantee it changed a guy's life.
Yeah.
And so, John, tell me, what do you see the challenges in the days ahead?
I think we're going to have to figure out how we accept and even to some extent pursue more complexity in how we operate in order to create additional choices and to really deliver the full range of options to the clients or neighbors that we serve. In other words, deliberately get a little more complex at the same time, looking for efficiencies and cost reductions and better deployment of resources. I mean, you can grow the quality of food you distribute. You can be more compassionate and closer to the needs of your neighbors and reduce costs and be more efficient. I mean, when I got here 5 years ago, we were spending 41 cents per meal. We just finished this last year amidst the pandemic at 13 cents a meal, with the most disrupted food supply chain since World War II. You can do it. And by the way, we didn't do that with one thing. We did that with literally dozens and dozens of changes that added up to that efficiency. At the same time, we found ways to, and again, every time I say we, I'm not meaning Gleaners alone. I am meaning the entire network of partners, including Shepherd and soup kitchens and pantries and fellow food banks, all the players, really. We have supporting roles with Eskenazi and Meals on Wheels and Second Helpings and Midwest Food Bank and others, so the we is very much the collective we anytime I say it. I want to clarify that. But we found ways to bring those down, and yet we also have found the greatest nutritional variety of food we've ever offered as a system. So we all need to avoid trade-offs when we don't have to make trade-offs. It doesn't have to be cost or quality or quantity or quality. We can pursue it all, but we're also going to have to lean harder on each other in terms of subject matter expertise and skill sets and so on. The other thing that stood out to me, Jay, is as United Way and others have hosted these calls, or even Indie Hunger Network has actually hosted statewide calls of hunger relief players this entire pandemic period. Mental health, formally and informally, care of employees, care of each other as leaders. It's, I think I knew it in an intellectual sense. I didn't know it so deeply in my heart in terms of the take care of your team and the people and each other. I bring that up in part because we're not through the woods yet. I'm actually seeing a little bit of a flare up of stress indicators and staff fatigue and, some of that now, even as we are more on a recovery trajectory, because we're making things a little more complicated, as I suggested, right? An example would be, we have a food pantry in our Gleaners distribution center, as do a couple other food banks in the state. And pre-pandemic, you could walk in and shop. That was your shopping option. Now, as we emerge from the pandemic, you can walk in and shop, or on Saturday, you can still do a drive through, or you can do order ahead and schedule a time for curbside pickup, which, yes, is suspiciously similar to my former employer's clickless program, but they know that. But the fourth option is home delivery. And so we emerge with four options. That's more work for the team, but it's far better for the neighbors we serve. Right. Yep. So that's an example of what I meant earlier by we have to accept that things may get more complicated, but we've also found ways to do each of those four methods cheaper, faster, more effectively. And that's how we cope with still offering all those things. And by the way, Jay, I don't know if others on this call realize that Shepherd is the first pilot partner for us on home delivery to do that last leg to the door delivery on our behalf. And it was a short, almost not a conversation on the Gleaners end to think who should be the first one to do that. And it's because you guys know your neighborhood like no other player in this county. And that's, if you're really neighbor centric in defining success, as I am, I mean, I think you should be proud of that. How well you know your neighbors. You know, when you elevate their voice, when you talk about what else is needed, you do it with informed authority, and you do it in a way that builds confidence with other partners like us. So thank you for stepping out first on that. Sharing Place here in Marion County and a couple others are going to follow your lead. So we're starting to grow some of the pilot activity, but there's credit due to the first one willing to try it.
Well, we appreciate that, John, the partnership, and you're providing us good food, healthy food. Yesterday, delivering the food, Jane and I were commenting, the box of fresh produce is so important. The frozen chicken that we had. And we don't have clients, we have neighbors. And I think that, I hope the way we view this is that it's ministry with, not to. And I'm excited because two of the homes I take extra food so that they can help distribute it because they know their neighbors. I'm going to ask Jason for just a moment. Jason, you coordinate for us that home delivery. And do you want to talk a little bit about that and what we're seeing and our food pantry on Saturday? And after that, we're going to hear from Tim about our own food preparation on site.
Yeah, it's been amazing as far as the home delivery program. It started out, I think, in May of this year. And we went through our growing pains, gathering volunteers to come in and help deliver that food. And now it is we have enough volunteers to cover almost every day. We would still love a few more. But it's amazing. We have some good stories come through this when we go to the doors of our neighbors. We've had people come up and say they need help with one person had their wallet stolen. So they had to replace all of their identification cards, driver's license, and they were kind of lost on how to do that. So they asked me, and I went over to our neighborhood engagement team and passed that lead along to them. And they were able to help him, a 70-year-old, get his identification back and all that. Just today, we have someone going over who has built a really good relationship with one of their stops. And they are talking with one of our neighbors, and she's a grandmother with a 12-year-old because her mother of the 12-year-old was killed, unfortunately. And the grandmother has taken on the responsibility, and she's about 80 years old. And this couple went over there today to begin mentoring the 12-year-old because the wife of the volunteer delivering has a 12 and a 9-year-old, and they're going to go out and help purchase some clothes, winter clothes, because she has far ways to walk into to get to the bus. And to me, that's just what it's all about, is making those connections to our neighbors who maybe feeling isolated because of COVID, or maybe they just don't have anyone to talk to. And when you're talking about reneighboring the hood, we are able to come in and be those neighbors to our neighbors, and be that encouragement, and be able to not just bring food to the door, but bring relationship as well. And for me, that's really what it's about, is coming in and being an ear, helping them be seen and heard, and letting them know they're seen and heard, which is important for humankind. And in a time like this, that's few and far between, opportunities for some of our neighbors to even be heard. So we've got a system now to where we deliver. They give us hopefully some referrals back to our other teams here at Shepherd. And I do want to thank Gleaners. I'm telling you, you guys have a well-run machine, great to work with, and thanks to your crew as well, because obviously you reaching out to us, we wouldn't be able to do this for our neighbors. So thank you.
Jason, what about Saturday morning? Something that we've done for years and still doing.
Yeah, so each Saturday morning we do have a pantry, and in the beginning of COVID, the pandemic, it went high. I forget, maybe 65 to 70 families came in, and we served them every Saturday. But then for some reason, it dropped way down into the teens. And then I went back to Gleaners, and I said, "Hey, is anyone else experiencing this?" And they said yes. For some reason, the numbers participating in pantries have dropped. But now it's climbed back up to around 45 families per week. And I am working on getting our shelves filled again, because it's good. It's a good problem to have. But that population visiting our pantry has gone back up. And again, we're able to meet our families' needs. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. So in our pantry, many of the volunteers are neighbors who are helping serve that. And we're excited about that. Tim, new to his role, but oversees our own kitchen. Tell us a little bit about what we're doing on site.
Sure. Thanks, Jay. And I got to experience the kitchen day 2. They don't waste any time getting you involved around here. And so I got to cut up tomatoes for the salad, and my wife cut up cucumbers for the salad, and they put us to work right away. But I will tell you, Jay mentioned I've been here about 5 weeks, and I have windows that look out in the parking lot, and I see the partnerships that John talked about. I see the Gleaners trucks come in, and I see another truck come in. Andrew's wife called me and said somebody's dropping off potatoes. I mean, just all these things that people bring to us because they do know that Shepherd has the ability to put food in bellies, so to speak. And so our kitchen is just a fascinating part of that. We have a superb kitchen that provides meals, I would say primarily for the academy here at Shepherd. And for those of you who are new to Shepherd or understanding Shepherd, we have an academy here of kids that are getting a great education. And actually part of that education is not having to worry about food while they're here. As they walk in the door, they're provided something for breakfast in their classroom. Then they have a lunch provided to them. And many of them that stick around afterwards will get a meal also in the evening, or they get snacks on the way home. And again, out my window, I've seen the pickup line where we especially on the weekends, give them meals that they can use for their family. We provide snack packs. I mean, the amount of food and effort that we put into, again, taking away as much food insecurity as possible is incredible. And it's really kind of a well-run machine back there in the kitchen. From a numbers perspective, in a month, our kitchen will prepare about 6,000 meals. And we do that again. We provide that to the academy here, and then to our daycare center, Minnie Hartman. We also take hot meals over there every day. And so it's just a wonderful opportunity for people to again, not have to worry about food while they're here. That doesn't eliminate their need for food other times, but while they're at school, they don't have to worry about food, and that allows them to get a quality education. And I think you can't put enough value on something like that, because as John so greatly described, how food can impact the quality of life, it can impact health, which in turn can impact, just about everything. So, I get excited when I see all that Shepherd's doing in the different areas to attack each one of those things. And again, the food portion of this nonprofit here at Shepherd is just fantastic, and I'm excited to be a part of it. But again, the kitchen's a well-oiled machine, and really all of us here that are with Shepherd and on this call have certainly rolled up our sleeves and helped in whatever capacity that is, and it's just fascinating and exciting to be able to put that volume of meals out, and again allow these kids not to have to worry about food while they're here, but to focus on education, and that's a huge thing.
And we have some great.
Jay, do you mind if I add a couple follow-ups to Tim's comments?
Sure.
So one thing that occurs to me, and obviously there are some criteria around donated food about who it's shared with. Most of those are USDA things that we begrudgingly pass along. We don't create them. We're not necessarily about making complex rules for ourselves or others, but the food that you guys have access to as our partner could be applied to prepared meal and feeding and so on. And even as you were talking about snacks for kids, we have a great partnership with Cliff Bar, for example. And the volume that we have from them fluctuates. But have you asked your Gleaners rep about whether there are food opportunities for those programs beyond the pantry activity?
Jay, I'm going to have to defer on that one.
Jason.
Yeah, I can check with that. Tim and I will work together, and I can talk with Jesse about that.
Okay. Yeah, because if she doesn't know some of those programs are going on, she may not know to offer that or something. So, and the other thing that occurs to me is we have 2 staff dietitians. One of which, Sarah Wilson, does a fair amount of teaching. And, for example, Jay, you're probably familiar with the Summer Youth Program Fund.
Yep.
That's co-led by Indianapolis Foundation and Lilly Endowment. Sarah makes the rounds of, well, first of all, we provide food to many of those sites during the summer. But also she picks a certain number of sites every summer and goes around and does nutrition education and food safety and things for kids. And it's not limited to summer in terms of that. So if you think it'd be helpful for the students that you have in your care, whenever the season of the year, that's again something that we could hook you up with Sarah as well. And we all know, if you educate the kids, they're going to take it home and teach the parents or grandparents or great grandparents, whoever is raising them. And the kids are great repeat teachers.
Yes. Well, we appreciate that. We have a great partnership with Hatch, and Hatch is a unique program that has figured out a sustainable model, and we distribute to each of the families we serve 2 dozen eggs a week. That's great protein. And I promise the ones I deliver, I haven't dropped any yet. But it is something that's very precious. It's the same thing when we get protein. I've had a friend who's donated beef, and the products that we get through Gleaners into the homes of folks when we get milk, being able to make that available is, if you've been to the grocery store lately, you've seen the prices, the inflation, and it hits our families even harder. This morning we talked about how our market on housing is just so challenged, and there are some families paying 50 and 60% of their income on their housing. And then when you have food costs creeping up, that's a double whammy. And we want to be there to continue to help them. I just want to take a quick minute and then encourage you, if you have any questions, go to the chat box and send some questions, and one of the folks here will be able to answer it. But where are we going? Where does Shepherd want to go in 2022? John mentions about being the last mile. Well, we're working with the feds to address a change in the federal system. So if you get SNAP, which is food stamps, you can have food delivered to your home. If you're on WIC, which is generally for young mothers who have children, you cannot. When you talk to someone in DC, they say, we're not sure why that's the case. And so we're working to try to get that changed so that WIC, which is primarily single moms, would be able to have the food delivered. And it's hard enough as a single mom taking your kids to the grocery store. Imagine during COVID. And so then we want to partner with retailers to say, for our neighbors, maybe we could be the last mile. Not all of them deliver in this neighborhood. Let's help our folks use their benefits and use their income in better ways to get healthier food. We want to continue to the home delivery. We want to continue to find healthy options. As John said, medicine does better when you have healthy food going into your body. It's not just food, but we want it to be good food. And we're working with Gleaners on a project to bump out the back of our building so that we can have more food storage and be able to take those dry goods. Last year, we had a donor who provided funding for us to add an exterior cooler and freezer that we use exclusively for this. And so we've got this new project that we're working on. But let me take a moment here. Is there any questions that you have for any of our folks? For John? Well, John, I'm going to ask you a question. Life's most embarrassing moment? No. John, what would you want to see in the future from Shepherd Community?
I don't know if my answer is so much something additional that you do, because I feel like you're such a comprehensive, thoughtfully integrated provider of services to your neighbors. I wouldn't change your model. I think we all find ways to continuously improve things and be more efficient and so on. So I'm sure there are better. I'm sure there are better ways to do things, but I think your opportunity, honestly, is to share that story and that success and facilitate replication in other neighborhoods. Because, as an early success in some of these things, maybe sometimes, and I would say it's the same thing. If Gleaners tries something out and it works pretty well, we share it with our sister food banks and the Feed America Network. We also borrow ideas from other food banks. So I think you're in the interesting position of sharing what works so that neighbors in other neighborhoods can benefit from what your neighbors maybe had a head start on.
Well, thank you. I think the motto or the phrase, growing capacity to reduce dependency. Mm-hmm. We want to help our families grow their, what we would say, 10 assets. And we use food to open the door so that we can bring, as John's described, this fully encompassing program that can help in multiple areas of their lives. We don't want to be here in 10 years serving the same folks. But we want to serve as many as we can right now and use that as the foundation to build relationships if we don't have it, to help them continue to grow and move forward. Right. Phil, I'm going to ask you, Phil, just to share with us, what are ways that folks could volunteer with us in our food and hunger opportunities?
Absolutely, Jay. And I want to personally thank all of you who are on this call and with your interest in learning how to help our families break the cycle of poverty as it pertains to food. And as we've heard today, that food is a great way or a means to establish relationships, as well as to foster a deeper relationship with our neighbors to help them break that cycle. And so you've heard from Jason today. He runs point on our food program, but we are always in need of individuals to deliver food Monday through Fridays and various times, as well as the food pantry on Saturday. where volunteers come alongside and they walk with neighbors and interface with them as they shop through the pantry. If you are interested in serving in these capacities, would love for you to reach out to Donna Alexander. She is our volunteer director, and she would help onboard you, answer your questions. You could reach out to her here at the center via phone, and that number is 317-375-0203. That's 317-375-0203. And if you wish to communicate via email, you can reach out to her at Donna Alexander or Donna A at shepherdcommunity.org. Donna A as an apple at shepherdcommunity.org. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would also say if you'd want to come, we're trying to upgrade from Tim, so we need someone to cut tomatoes that knows what they're doing. And so if you'd want to help in our kitchen, and sometimes businesses have said, hey, we'll come once a month and bring a group. A church has said we'll sometimes come and bring a group on the same date and help us in serving our kids. And we serve 3 meals a day, Monday through Thursday, 2 on Friday, send the kids home with the food packs for the weekend. So if you like to be in the kitchen, we have a chef and a kitchen manager who could use your efforts as well. As we close, I want to share with you, if you're interested to know more about maybe financially helping us with our bump out, you can contact Colton. Is on Colton W at shepherdcommunity.org, or you could reach out to me. We want to get that project started in the spring. We realize we're probably not going to be able to get it done this during the next couple of months. We'd hope we could, but we're not. And there's also other opportunities. Sometimes we have to buy maybe specific items. And I'll say this: if you said, "Hey, I want to go shopping and buy something," personal hygiene items are very precious in our pantry. You cannot use SNAP benefits for diapers. I've seen them reused. In my 26 years here, I've seen families who dry wet ones so that they can reuse them. So diapers are generally a need. Feminine hygiene, soap, shampoo, all these things, laundry detergents are things you cannot purchase with your SNAP. So at a time I'm sure if you've ever shopped recently, you know that prices are going up and packages are going smaller. And I remember a time when I would open a box of cereal and it was filled. Now I could stick my head in the box and it wouldn't hit any cereal. And so inflation, it has a huge impact. But those are things, if you travel, those items that you get at the store and you bring back in your package, and then you end up having in your bathroom 42 bars of soap and 32 shampoos, those are things you could donate and help us as well. So, and like one businessman does periodically, when he slaughters a cow, he says, I'm going to give you part of that cow, and we're able to deliver that hamburger out as well. And so there are a variety of ways we'd love to explore that with you. Thank you for joining us. And John, thank you for the great job. Hey, support Gleaners. They're doing a great job and impacting many. We're great partners. We're in this together. We're on the road to recovery. Won't you join us?